The day Earth made first contact with alien life started like any other Tuesday. Boring, uneventful, and with Commander Jack Reynolds nursing his third cup of coffee while staring blankly at routine orbital scans. That is until the massive crystalline ship materialized just outside Jupiter's orbit. "Well, that's new," Jack muttered, coffee spilling over his uniform as alarms blared across Space Station Omega. Within hours, the United Earth Defense Council had assembled their hastily formed first contact team, which consisted of exactly 3 people who happened to be on the station with relevant qualifications. Commander Jack Reynolds, a military man with diplomacy skills comparable to those of a particularly grumpy Badger doctor. Ellie Morgan, a xenobiologist whose dissertation had been titled, "What If They're Actually Made of Cheese?" And Kenzo Nakamura, an actual diplomat who was only on the station because his flight to the Neptune colonies had been delayed. "So you're telling me," Jack said as they prepared to board the alien shuttle, "that our entire species' first impression depends on us 3? "Technically," Ellie replied, adjusting her glasses, "it depends on you not saying something like that in front of them." Kenzo sighed, "Please remember the protocols. No sudden movements, no showing teeth, and absolutely no references to old sci-fi movies." "But what if they look exactly like the especially then?" Kenzo interrupted. The alien delegation turned out to be the Zethians, a highly advanced civilization that resembled 7-foot-tall blue octopi wearing elaborate crystal armor. Communication was initially challenging until the Zethians deployed their universal translation devices, which transformed their natural song-like language into something humans could understand, albeit with an inexplicable Australian accent. "G'day humans," boomed the lead alien, Ambassador Trell. "Bloody ripper to finally meet ya. We've been watching your broadcasts for decades." Jack leaned toward Ellie. "Is this normal?" "Nothing about this is normal," she whispered back. "I've got 4 PhDs and I'm still processing the fact that aliens exist, let alone that they sound like Steve Irwin." The initial exchange went surprisingly well. The Zethians explained they were part of a vast galactic community and had been observing Earth for centuries, waiting for humans to develop sufficiently to join the interstellar neighborhood. They were particularly impressed by human resilience, creativity, and reality television. "Your bachelor program," Ambassador Trell explained, waving tentacles excitedly, "absolutely fascinating social experiment. Such primitive mating rituals. We had a betting pool on who would receive the final flower." "That's flattering," Kenzo replied diplomatically, while Jack struggled to maintain his military composure. After several days of preliminary discussions, the Zethians extended an invitation that would change interspecies relations forever. They proposed a cultural exchange program, beginning with a diplomatic visit to their homeworld, Zethia Prime. "It's only 2 light-years away with our drive technology," Trell explained. "Quick trip. We'll have you there and back before your Earth politicians even finish drafting the welcome resolution." The Earth Defense Council debated for approximately 12 minutes before unanimously voting yes. After all, what could possibly go wrong? 3 weeks later, Jack, Ellie and Kenzo found themselves aboard the Zethian vessel, hurtling through space at speeds that made Einstein's theories seem more like gentle suggestions. "I still can't believe we're the first humans to visit an alien planet," Ellie said, furiously taking notes on her tablet. "This is going to revolutionize every field of science." "I still can't believe they packed us those freeze-dried meal packets," Jack grumbled. 3 weeks of astronaut ice cream and powdered eggs. My kingdom for a cheeseburger." Kenzo flipped through his cultural briefing materials. "Focus please, we need to review Zethian customs before arrival. For instance, their formal greeting involves touching tentacles to foreheads, which will adapt by not having tentacles." Jack interrupted, "By using our hands," Kenzo continued patiently. "Also, in their culture standing taller than your host is considered aggressive, so we'll need to crouch slightly when meeting dignitaries." "Great," Jack sighed. 3 weeks of space travel just to develop permanent back problems. The Zethian homeworld was a marvel of bioluminescent oceans and crystalline cities that seemed to grow organically from the planet's surface. As their shuttle descended toward the capital city, Ellie pressed her face against the viewport like an excited child. "Look at those structures. They appear to be silicon-based lifeforms in symbiosis with the buildings. This challenges every assumption we've made about—" Yes, science is amazing," Jack cut in. "But more importantly, do they have bathrooms compatible with human anatomy? Because that freeze-dried coffee went right through me." Upon landing, they were greeted by an elaborate welcoming committee led by Ambassador Trell, accompanied by Cultural Officer Vexa, distinguished by her rainbow-colored tentacles, and Security Chief Dorn, recognizable by the intimidating array of crystal weapons integrated into his armor. "Welcome to Zethia Prime, my human mates," Trell exclaimed. "We've prepared a proper welcoming ceremony, followed by a grand feast featuring our planet's most distinguished culinary achievements." Jack perked up instantly. "Did you say feast? With actual food, non-freeze-dried food?" Ellie elbowed him sharply. "What our colleague means," Kenzo interjected smoothly, "is that we're deeply honored by your hospitality and excited to experience your culture firsthand." The welcoming ceremony was an elaborate affair involving synchronized tentacle dancing, crystal harmonics that made human teeth vibrate uncomfortably, and a ritual where the humans were draped in living bioluminescent cloaks that occasionally pulsed in rhythm with their heartbeats. "These are Lumina mantles," Vexa explained proudly. "They're semi-sentient ceremonial garments reserved for our most honored guests. They bond temporarily with your nervous system to create a unique light pattern." "So, we're wearing living mood rings?" Jack asked, staring at his cloak as it flickered between anxious orange and hungry red. "That's not entirely inaccurate," Vexa conceded. The cultural tour continued through the capital city, with the humans struggling to maintain protocol while confronted with increasingly bizarre alien concepts. They were shown crystal gardens where the plants sang mathematical equations, introduced to pet-like creatures that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions, and given a demonstration of Zethian recreational activities that appeared to involve voluntary temporary molecular disassembly. "And this," Trell announced proudly as they entered a massive hall decorated with impressive trophies, "is our Hall of Hunters, dedicated to our greatest cultural achievement, the Kraknar hunt." The centerpiece of the hall was a massive hologram showing a terrifying creature that resembled a cross between an earth dragon, a giant squid, and a nightmare with teeth. Even in holographic form, it radiated such menace that Jack instinctively reached for the weapon he'd been required to leave on the ship. "What the hell is that?" he whispered. "The Kraknar," Dorn answered, tentacles flexing with pride, "the apex predator of our world. For millennia, they ruled Zethia with impunity. Our ancestors lived in fear, hiding in caves until we developed the courage and technology to challenge them. They're magnificent," Ellie breathed, her scientist's curiosity overwhelming her survival instinct. "Indeed," Vexa agreed. "The Kraknar hunt is our most sacred tradition. Only our bravest warriors attempt it, and many do not return. To defeat a Kraknar is the highest honor in our society." Kenzo, ever alert to cultural significance, bowed respectfully. "We appreciate you sharing this important tradition with us." "Oh, but we've saved the best for last," Trell said excitedly. "Tonight's grand feast has been planned for months. We'll showcase our finest cultural delicacies, including," he paused dramatically, "our most exotic meats and proteins, specially prepared to accommodate your human digestive systems." Jack's stomach growled loudly enough to echo through the hall. His cloak flashed a deep hungry crimson. "I think what my colleague is trying to say," Ellie translated with a smile, "is that we're looking forward to it." As they were escorted to their quarters to prepare for the evening's festivities, none of the humans realized they were about to trigger the greatest interspecies diplomatic incident since the beginning of time. Nor did they suspect that within 24 hours, their actions would forever change how the galaxy viewed humanity, and not necessarily for the better. Kenzo gazed out at the alien landscape from their quarters. "Remember," he instructed his colleagues, "tonight is crucial for Earth-Zethian relations. We must be on our absolute best behavior." Jack flopped onto a bed that seemed to be made of living crystal. "Right, best behavior. No problem." His cloak flashed a dubious purple. "I mean it, Jack. No inappropriate comments. No cultural faux pas. And for the love of everything, please don't ask if anything tastes like chicken." Little did they know that chicken would be the least of their concerns very, very soon. The Grand Feast Hall of Zethia Prime resembled a bioluminescent cathedral, with pulsating crystal chandeliers and tables made from what appeared to be living coral. Jack, Ellie, and Kenzo were seated at the head table with Ambassador Trell and other Zethian dignitaries. "Tonight," Trell announced, tentacles raised ceremoniously, "we honor our human guests with our finest cuisine." The first few courses were strange but manageable, crystalline fruits that sang when bitten, soup that changed color based on the diner's mood, and something resembling space algae that Ellie insisted was fascinating, while Jack quietly fed his to a potted plant. Then came the main course. "Behold," exclaimed Trell as servers brought in massive platters, "the greatest delicacy of Zethia, the eternal vegetable garden." The platters contained elaborate arrangements of multicolored plants that moved slightly, as if breathing. "It's beautiful," Kenzo said diplomatically, though his expression suggested otherwise. Jack stared at his plate, then at the holographic image of the Kraknar, displayed prominently on the wall. "So, what about that thing?" he asked, pointing. "The Kraknar. Do you guys eat those?" The hall fell silent. Every Zethian froze mid-tentacle. "Eat the Kraknar." Trell's translator device seemed to glitch, repeating the phrase in increasingly horrified tones. "Yeah," Jack continued, oblivious to the tension. "I mean on Earth, apex predators are usually pretty tasty, like sharks or lions. You eat your planet's apex predators." Security Chief Dorn's tentacles curled defensively. "Well, not lions so much anymore, but historically, yeah." Jack shrugged. "Is that weird?" Ellie kicked him under the table, but the damage was done. "The Kraknar is sacred," Vexa gasped. "They are worthy adversaries, not food." Although a younger Zethian scientist named Neil interjected, "Technically there's no biological reason humans couldn't consume Kraknar meat. It might even be compatible with their digestive systems." "Meal," the entire Zethian delegation hissed in unison. "Too late." Jack's eyes had lit up. "Really? What's it taste like?" "That's irrelevant," Trell sputtered. "One does not simply eat the Kraknar." Kenzo attempted damage control. "Please forgive my colleague's curiosity. On Earth many predatory animals are considered delicacies. We meant no offense, actually," Ellie added, scientific curiosity overriding diplomatic sense. "Humans have traditionally hunted and consumed apex predators as a way of demonstrating dominance over nature. It's an ancient cultural practice." The Zethians began rapidly communicating among themselves in their native song language, too quick for the translators to keep up. "Did I just cause an interplanetary incident?" Jack whispered to Kenzo. "You suggested eating their cultural icon." Kenzo replied through clenched teeth. "What do you think?" Trell finally regained composure. "Is this true? Does your species demonstrate dominance by consuming your conquered foes?" Jack, seeing an opportunity, nodded solemnly. "It's one of our most sacred traditions, the ultimate show of respect for a worthy opponent." The Zethian delegation huddled in an emergency conference while the humans exchanged nervous glances. "What are you doing?" Kenzo hissed. "Improvising diplomacy," Jack replied. "Trust me." After several tense minutes, Trell returned. "We find your customs disturbing. However, in the interest of cultural exchange, we propose a solution. If you humans can defeat a Kraknar in ritual combat, as our traditions demand, you may consume it." "Wait, what?" Jack's confidence faltered. "Indeed," Dorn added with what might have been a Zethian smirk. "After all, surely mighty human predators would wish to earn their meal through honorable combat." Kenzo tried to intervene, but Jack's pride was already engaged. "Challenge accepted," he declared. "We humans will hunt the Kraknar." As the Zethians erupted in excited chatter, Ellie leaned over to Jack. "The Kraknar is 30 feet tall, breathes fire, and has been known to destroy entire Zethian battle cruisers." Jack's face fell. "Ah, and you just volunteered us to hunt one." "So, not my best diplomatic moment." Kenzo buried his face in his hands. "I should have taken that connecting flight to Neptune." "This emergency session of the Zethian High Council will come to order," announced Grand Counselor Navi, their tentacles arranged in the formal pattern of utmost concern. "We must address the human situation." Ambassador Trell bobbed nervously before the semicircular council chamber. "To summarize, humans consume apex predators as a cultural practice, find our sacred Kraknar appetizing, and have accepted the ritual hunt challenge." "Preposterous," exclaimed Counselor Zeph. "They're barely bipedal. How could they possibly defeat a Kraknar?" "That's what I'm worried about," Trell replied. "What if they actually succeed?" Back in the human quarters, a similar crisis meeting was underway. "Let me get this straight," Kenzo said, pacing furiously. "You volunteered us to hunt an alien super predator because you were hungry for meat. When you say it like that, it sounds bad," Jack muttered. Ellie looked up from her tablet. According to the cultural database they provided, no Zethian hunting party has successfully taken down a Kraknar without at least 5 casualties in the past century. Well, that's encouraging, Jack groaned. 5 casualties out of how many hunters? Kenzo asked. 5. Great, so we have a 0% survival rate to look forward to. Jack stood up. Look, I messed up, but I've been reviewing Zethian cultural practices, and there's no way to back out without causing even greater offense. We'd essentially be declaring humans inferior to Zethians, which in relation to Kraknar hunting abilities, we demonstrably are, Kenzo shouted. Not necessarily, Ellie interjected. Zethians hunt using ceremonial crystal spears and traditional techniques, but we're not Zethians. What are you suggesting? Jack asked. That we hunt like humans, she replied with a growing smile, with all the unfair advantages that entails. Meanwhile, the Zethian scientists had convened their own session. The biochemical analysis is complete, junior scientist Meal reported. Human digestive systems are theoretically compatible with Kraknar tissue. Cultural officer Vexa recoiled. This is abhorrent. The Kraknar is a noble adversary, not dinner. What kind of species eats its predators? Security Chief Dorn wondered. It's unnatural, actually, Meal continued. I've been reviewing Earth broadcasts. Humans have a long history of consuming apex predators. They call it game meat, and consider it a delicacy. They even farm once wild predators for food. The assembled Zethians emitted a harmonized note of disgust. Perhaps we've misunderstood humanity, Ambassador Trell suggested. What if their entire technological development was driven by the desire to eat increasingly dangerous creatures? Their history is full of references to conquering natures, Vexa noted. What if that's literal? Security Chief Dorn's tentacles curled defensively. Are we certain it's wise to invite such a species into the galactic community? The following morning, the human team was summoned to a formal briefing about the Kraknar hunt. The atmosphere was noticeably tenser than before. The ritual hunt will commence tomorrow at dawn, Dorn explained. Keeping a safe distance from the humans, you will be provided with traditional hunting implements and, actually, Jack interrupted. Under the terms of cultural exchange, we'd like to hunt using human methods. The Zethians exchanged nervous glances. What, exactly does that entail? Trell asked cautiously. Standard Earth hunting protocols, Jack replied with a deliberately vague wave of his hand. Nothing too elaborate. We're simply interested in demonstrating how our species approaches such challenges, Ellie added with an innocent smile. Vexa leaned close to Trell. They're planning something, obviously, Trell whispered back, but refusing would be a cultural insult. Very well, Dorn declared. You may use your human methods. However, for fairness, you may only bring equipment that 3 Zethians could carry. Agreed, Jack said quickly, before Kenzo could object. As they left the briefing, Kenzo grabbed Jack's arm. Please tell me you have a plan that doesn't end with us being eaten. Ellie's working on it, Jack replied. Something about human evolutionary advantages and technological innovation. That's not a plan. That's a TED Talk. Back in their quarters, Ellie had transformed their common area into a makeshift laboratory, surrounded by holographic displays of Kraknar anatomy and behavior patterns. The good news, she announced as they entered, is that I've identified several Kraknar vulnerabilities. The bad news is that exploiting them requires equipment we don't have. What about the Zethian hunting gear? Kenzo asked. Ceremonial at best, their crystal spears are beautiful but inefficient. Which makes sense, the Kraknar hunt is supposed to be challenging. So we're doomed, Kenzo concluded. Not necessarily, Jack said, a familiar gleam in his eye. Ellie, can you create a requisition list? I need to have a chat with our old friend Miel. The junior scientist. Why? Because every alien civilization needs its rebel, and Miel strikes me as someone with healthy scientific curiosity and minimal cultural hang-ups. 4 hours later, Jack returned with a triumphant grin. It's arranged. Miel is deeply interested in human hunting techniques and willing to help us acquire certain non-traditional materials. Is that ethical? Kenzo worried. We could be corrupting their culture. More ethical than dying horribly, Jack countered. Besides, we're not breaking any rules, just creatively interpreting them. That evening, as the humans prepared for their hunt, the Zethian High Council made a fateful decision. Tomorrow's hunt will be broadcast throughout the galactic network, Grand Counselor Navi declared. Let all species witness the true nature of humanity. Ambassador Trell squirmed uncomfortably. Is that necessary? If the humans fail, then the galaxy will understand the consequences of arrogance, Dorn interrupted. And if they somehow succeed, then we'll need to reconsider everything we thought we knew about them, Vexa finished quietly. As night fell on Zethia Prime, both species prepared for a day that would forever change their relationship. The humans worked late into the night, assembling their traditional hunting equipment with Meal's clandestine assistance. Will this actually work? Kenzo asked, examining the strange contraption taking shape before him. Theoretically, Ellie hedged. The physics are sound but without proper testing. We'll test it tomorrow, Jack said with forced confidence. On the real thing. And if it fails? Kenzo pressed. Jack shrugged. Then I guess we'll find out if Kraknar prefer their humans raw or well done. As the twin moons of Zethia rose over the crystal spires of the capital, news of the impending hunt spread throughout the planet. Viewing parties were organized, bets were placed, and the vast majority of Zethians prepared to witness what they assumed would be a brief, educational, and likely fatal demonstration of human hubris. They had no idea what they were about to witness. Dawn broke over the Crimson Valley, a vast expanse of red crystal formations and sparse vegetation that served as the traditional Kraknar hunting grounds. A massive viewing platform had been erected overnight, filled with Zethian dignitaries and representatives from various galactic species who had arrived via emergency FTL travel to witness the unprecedented event. This is madness, Kenzo muttered as they surveyed the arena from their preparation tent. Half the galaxy is watching. Good, Jack replied, checking their makeshift equipment one last time. More witnesses to our triumph. Or our deaths, Kenzo added grimly. Ellie looked up from her final calculations. The trap is ready. Remember the plan. Jack distracts. I position the catalyst. Kenzo triggers the sequence. And if anything goes wrong, Kenzo asked. Run like hell, Jack suggested. Preferably in different directions to confuse it. Ambassador Trell entered their tent, followed by Security Chief Dorn and Junior Scientist Meal, who was trying very hard to look innocent and failing spectacularly. The ceremonial hunt begins in 1 hour, Trell announced. Are you prepared? Jack gestured to their equipment. A collection of modified Zethian technology, repurposed scientific instruments, and what appeared to be a makeshift catapult. Totally prepared. This is all standard human hunting gear. Dorn's translator device made a skeptical buzzing sound. This doesn't resemble any Earth hunting equipment in our database. Regional variations, Ellie explained quickly. Very traditional in certain Earth subcultures. Meal's tentacles fluttered nervously. The modifications we discussed look interesting. Indeed, Jack agreed with a significant look. Very standard human innovation. After the Zethians departed, Kenzo rounded on Jack. You realize they're suspicious. Of course they're suspicious. But they're also bound by their cultural protocols. As long as we don't explicitly break the rules, they have to let us proceed. A massive horn sounded across the valley, its deep resonance shaking the crystal formations. That's our cue, Ellie said, gathering her portion of the equipment. The Kraknar has been released into the hunting grounds. The humans emerged from their tent to thunderous alien sounds. Whether cheers or jeers was impossible to tell. The viewing platform was now packed with spectators, many using advanced optical enhancements to capture every detail of what most assumed would be a brief and violent demonstration of natural selection. Grand Counselor Navi's voice boomed across the valley. Let the ritual hunt commence. May the worthy prevail. As the humans ventured into the valley, they could hear the commentators on the official broadcast. And here we see the human hunting party entering the sacred grounds, announced the primary Zethian commentator. Note their unusual equipment and upright gait, so inefficient for stalking. Indeed, Zeller agreed, the secondary commentator. Their bipedal structure leaves them terribly vulnerable to Kraknar tail strikes. I predict fatalities within the first 10 minutes. That's encouraging, Kenzo whispered as they moved deeper into the valley. The landscape grew increasingly wild as they advanced. Crystal formations jutted from the ground like massive teeth, casting long shadows in the morning light. Vegetation became denser, consisting primarily of bioluminescent fungi and pulsating crystal growths. According to Meal's data, the Kraknar prefers to ambush its prey from elevated positions, Ellie said, consulting her scanner. We should reach the ideal location in about half a kilometer. Ideal for us, or ideal for it to eat us? Jack asked. Both, actually. We need the right terrain for our trap, which happens to be exactly the kind of hunting ground it prefers. They reached a circular clearing, surrounded by tall crystal spires. At its center stood a single massive crystalline tree, its branches spreading like a glittering canopy. This is it, Ellie announced. Jack, you're up first. Jack nodded, unslinging the strange device from his back. Remember, once I get its attention, you have exactly 2 minutes to set up the catalyst before I lead it to the target zone, and I stay hidden until you give the signal. Kenzo confirmed, clutching the remote trigger. God, this is insane. Sometimes insanity is just innovation that hasn't been validated yet. Ellie offered with a nervous smile. Jack moved to the center of the clearing and activated the device, a modified Zethian communication array now reconfigured to emit the precise frequency of a Kraknar territorial challenge. The effect was immediate. A distant roar shook the valley so powerful that crystal shards rained down from the formations around them. That doesn't sound like a 30-foot predator, Kenzo said, voice quavering. That sounds bigger. Meal mentioned that the one they released is an exceptional specimen, Ellie admitted. Apparently they wanted to give us the full traditional experience. How thoughtful, Jack muttered, readying the secondary component of their plan, a modified flare gun that would fire concentrated bursts of what Meal had described as particularly irritating sensory stimulant. The ground trembled with approaching footsteps. Trees cracked and crystal formations shattered as something massive moved toward the clearing. Remember, Ellie whispered as she and Kenzo retreated to their positions. Stick to the plan. Jack stood alone in the clearing, trying to project confidence while his knees threatened to buckle. The Zethian broadcast commentators were going wild. Extraordinary. The lead human appears to be implementing some sort of ritualistic solo confrontation. A bold strategy, Zeller though ultimately futile. The isolated human will provide barely an appetizer for a full-grown Kraknar. The creature that burst into the clearing defied description. It was vaguely reptilian but covered in crystalline scales that refracted light in dazzling patterns. 6 massive limbs, 4 legs and 2 powerful forearms, supported a body the size of a battle tank. Its head featured multiple rows of teeth and several pairs of glowing eyes. Most terrifying was the tail, which ended in a club of pure crystal that looked capable of pulverizing steel. Oh shit, was all Jack managed before the Kraknar let out another deafening roar and charged. He fired the flare gun directly at the creature's face. The projectile burst into a cloud of bright purple gas that enveloped the Kraknar's head. The effect was instantaneous. The beast reared back, shaking its massive head and emitting a high-pitched shriek of irritation. Jack turned and ran toward the predetermined path, yelling into his communicator. It worked. Ellie, you're up. This thing is seriously pissed off. From her position halfway up one of the crystal spires, Ellie began rapidly assembling the catalyst, a complex device that combined Zethian crystal technology with principles of Earth chemistry. 30 seconds. Keep it distracted. Keeping the Kraknar distracted proved surprisingly easy, as it seemed intent on reducing Jack to a smear on the landscape. He ducked and weaved through narrow passages between crystal formations, using the creature's size against it. Every time it began to lose interest, he fired another irritant flare, ensuring its rage remained focused solely on him. On the viewing platform, the Zethian audience watched in stunned silence. This is unexpected, the commentator admitted. The human is demonstrating remarkable agility and strategic retreat capabilities. A delaying tactic at best, his colleague countered. Though I must admit, surviving 3 minutes against a Kraknar is impressive for any non-Zethian species. Ambassador Trell leaned toward Cultural Officer Vexa. Are they actually implementing a plan, or just postponing the inevitable? I'm not certain, Vexa replied, tentacles twitching anxiously, but they're displaying more coordination than I expected. In the hunting grounds, Jack had successfully led the Kraknar to the target zone, a narrow ravine lined with particularly reflective crystal formations. Kenzo, now, Jack shouted into his communicator as he dove behind a boulder. From his hidden position, Kenzo activated the trigger. The catalyst Ellie had positioned emitted a powerful pulse of energy that interacted with the crystalline environment in exactly the way their calculations had predicted. The crystal formations amplified and redirected the energy, creating a cascading reaction that engulfed the ravine in a blinding network of energy beams. The Kraknar, caught in the center of this artificial light storm, froze in confusion as its sensitive eyes were overwhelmed by the spectacle. This was the moment they had planned for. "Jack, the net," Ellie called. Jack activated the final component of their makeshift hunting equipment, what appeared to be a harmless bundle of metal filaments but rapidly expanded into an electromagnetically charged net that enveloped the disoriented Kraknar. The audience erupted in chaotic noise as the formerly unstoppable predator thrashed helplessly, entangled in the human contraption. "Unprecedented," the commentator shouted. "The humans have somehow incapacitated the Kraknar using methods never before witnessed in ritual hunts." Security Chief Dorn leapt to his feet. "This cannot be allowed. They're using technology, not traditional hunting methods." Ambassador Trell restrained him with a tentacle. "They specified human methods. We agreed to their terms." "But this isn't hunting," Dorn protested. It's innovation," Vexa finished, a note of reluctant admiration in her voice. On the hunting grounds, the final phase of the human plan was underway. With the Kraknar temporarily immobilized, Jack approached cautiously, carrying what appeared to be a simple spear but was actually a sophisticated delivery system for a powerful sedative compound that Meal had helped them synthesize. "By the laws of the hunt," Jack declared loudly, aware that every word was being broadcast across the galaxy, "I claim the right of the hunter over the hunted." He plunged the spear into a vulnerable spot beneath the Kraknar's scales that Ellie had identified. The sedative took effect almost immediately. The mighty predator's struggles weakened, then ceased entirely as it slipped into unconsciousness. Silence fell across the valley and the viewing platform. Then, slowly, a single Zethian began tapping tentacles together in their version of applause. Others joined, until the sound swelled into a rhythmic thunder. "They actually did it," Meal whispered, eyes wide with amazement. "Humans hunted a Kraknar." As Jack, Ellie, and Kenzo stood triumphantly beside the sedated creature, the implications of their success began to dawn on the assembled aliens. These humans weren't just another species joining the galactic community. They were something else entirely, creatures who confronted apex predators not with brute strength or centuries of evolutionary adaptation, but with improvisation, technology, and a disturbing willingness to bend rules to their advantage. And now, according to Zethian law, they had earned the right to eat it. By the ancient laws of the hunt, the Kraknar belongs to the hunters who subdued it, Grand Counselor Navi announced, their voice echoing across the now silent arena. Though the methods were unconventional, Jack, Ellie, and Kenzo stood before the Zethian High Council in the ceremonial chamber, still dirty and exhausted from their ordeal. Behind them, the sedated Kraknar lay on a massive transport platform, its crystalline scales glimmering under the chamber's lights. "Unconventional," Security Chief Dorn sputtered, tentacles writhing in agitation. "They used technology, trickery, not strength or skill." "Actually," Ellie interjected, "we used the most traditional human hunting method of all, our brains." This statement caused a ripple of translation devices to chirp and buzz as various alien species consulted their linguistic databases. "Explain," Vexa requested, leaning forward with scientific curiosity. "Humans evolved as persistence hunters," Ellie continued. "We weren't the strongest or fastest predator, but we were the smartest. We didn't evolve natural weapons like claws or fangs. Instead, we created tools and strategies that let us hunt creatures much larger and more dangerous than ourselves." "That's not hunting," Dorn insisted. "That's cheating." Jack shrugged. "We call it evolutionary advantage. When your species can't breathe fire or crush boulders with your tail, you get creative." The Grand Counselor's tentacles formed a contemplative pattern. "You hunt with your minds rather than your bodies." "Exactly," Kenzo confirmed, finally finding diplomatic footing. "Our entire history has been shaped by this approach. We see obstacles, even apex predators, as problems to be solved rather than enemies to be confronted directly." A murmur spread through the assembled aliens. Several began accessing Earth's historical database, reviewing human hunting techniques with new understanding. "They've always done this," one alien observer noted with dawning comprehension. "From primitive traps to modern technology. They've never fought fair. Why would we?" Jack asked, genuinely puzzled. "Fair is for sporting competitions between equals. Nature isn't fair." Survival isn't fair. Ambassador Trell cleared his throat, or whatever passed for a throat in Zethian anatomy. The law is clear. You have earned the right to do with the Kraknar as you wish. Including, he shuddered visibly, consuming it. About that, Jack said, a smile spreading across his face. We've been discussing it, and we have a proposal. The Zethians tensed, tentacles curling defensively. We'd like to invite the High Council to join us for a cultural exchange dinner, Jack continued, where we'll prepare the Kraknar, according to human culinary traditions. Horrified gasps echoed throughout the chamber. You expect us to participate in consuming a Kraknar? Dorn was practically vibrating with outrage. Not the whole thing, Ellie clarified quickly. Just a taste, a symbolic gesture of interspecies understanding. Kenzo stepped forward. On Earth, sharing food is one of our most important cultural bonding rituals. By inviting you to share this meal, we're offering the highest form of respect. The council withdrew for an emergency session that lasted several hours. When they returned, Grand Counselor Navi looked resigned, but resolute. In the interest of galactic harmony and cultural exchange, we accept your invitation. The ceremonial tasting will occur tomorrow evening. As the humans left the chamber, Junior Scientist Meal caught up with them in the corridor. That was brilliant, Meal whispered excitedly. The council is in complete disarray. Half think you're barbarians, half think you're geniuses, and everyone's terrified. Is that good? Kenzo asked nervously. It's unprecedented, Meal replied. And in galactic politics, unprecedented means influential. You've just established humans as a species to be reckoned with. Great, Jack said. Now we just need to figure out how to cook this thing. Back in their quarters, the reality of their situation sank in. We have to prepare an alien apex predator for consumption by multiple species with completely different biochemistry. Ellie summarized. Without poisoning anyone or causing an interplanetary incident. Can it even be safely eaten? Kenzo worried. According to Meal's data, yes, its flesh is compatible with human digestion. For the Zethians, it's not optimal but not toxic either. So we just need to make it delicious, Jack concluded. No pressure, Kenzo muttered. The following day, the humans were granted access to the palace kitchens, a laboratory-like space where Zethian culinary artists combined scientific precision with artistic presentation. With Meal's assistance, they analyzed the Kraknar's biochemistry and identified cuts that would best translate to Earth cooking techniques. The cellular structure here is similar to Earth crustaceans, Ellie noted, examining samples. And this portion resembles something between beef and alligator. So we treat it like surf and turf, Jack suggested. Simple preparation to highlight the natural flavors. The Zethians primarily consume crystal-based vegetation, Meal informed them. Their palates are sensitive to mineral compounds rather than proteins. Then we'll need complementary side dishes, Kenzo said, surprising the others with his sudden culinary interest. My grandmother was a chef. I picked up a few things. As evening approached, news of the unprecedented dinner spread throughout the galaxy. Viewing rights were sold at astronomical prices, with billions of beings across thousands of species tuning in to witness what many were calling the most outrageous cultural exchange in galactic history. The dining hall had been transformed for the occasion. In the kitchen, the humans worked frantically to finalize their preparations, acutely aware of the historical significance and potential diplomatic catastrophe of the meal they were about to serve. Are we really doing this? Kenzo asked, wiping sweat from his brow as he arranged garnishes on elaborately plated Kraknar steaks. Too late to back out now, Jack replied, checking the temperature of what they had decided to call Kraknar scampi. Ellie adjusted the molecular stabilizer that kept the different preparations at optimal serving conditions. If we pull this off, it'll redefine human-alien relations forever. And if we don't, Kenzo worried, then we'll be remembered as the humans who both defeated and then ruined a Kraknar. Jack shrugged. Still a legend, just not the one we're aiming for. The Zethian High Council entered the dining hall to a fanfare of crystalline tones. They moved tentatively, clearly uncomfortable with the situation, but bound by their own cultural protocols to participate. Ambassador Trell looked particularly anxious, his colors shifting rapidly between diplomatic blue and nauseated green. Distinguished representatives of Zethia, Jack began formally as the humans presented the first course. We are honored to share this historical meal with you. We present Kraknar prepared in traditional human styles, symbolizing the coming together of our cultures. The Zethians stared at the plates placed before them. The portions were small, symbolic rather than substantial, accompanied by earth herbs and spices, modified to be compatible with Zethian biochemistry. You're expected to consume this? Grand Counselor Navi asked, tentacles hovering uncertainly over their plate. A small taste is all we ask, Kenzo assured them. As a gesture of mutual respect, the humans demonstrated, taking the first bites of their portions. After a moment's hesitation, the Zethians followed suit, using specialized utensils that were a compromise between human forks and Zethian feeding appendages. The reaction was immediate and unexpected. The Zethians froze, their color patterns shifting rapidly. This is, Vexa started, then paused, seemingly at a loss for words. Problematic, Kenzo suggested nervously. Fascinating, Vexa finished. The molecular structure creates resonance patterns unlike anything in our cuisine. Security Chief Dorn, who had been most vehemently opposed to the entire concept, reluctantly took another bite. It's not unpleasant, he admitted with obvious surprise. Around the table, the Zethians continued sampling the various Kraknar preparations, their initial disgust giving way to scientific curiosity, and in some cases, cautious appreciation. The flavor profile activates neural pathways not typically engaged by our traditional foods. Meal explained, the most enthusiastic of the group. It's a completely novel sensory experience. As the meal progressed, the atmosphere gradually shifted from tense diplomatic obligation to genuine cultural exchange. The humans shared stories of Earth's culinary traditions, while the Zethians explained the significance of the Kraknar in their history and mythology. By the final course, a delicate Kraknar consommé that Kenzo had improvised based on his grandmother's recipes, Ambassador Trell had regained his composure enough to offer a toast. To our human guests, he proclaimed, raising a crystal vessel, who have demonstrated that there are many ways to honor a worthy adversary, even if some of those ways remain somewhat disturbing to us. Jack raised his glass in return. And to our Zethian hosts, who were brave enough to try something new, even when it violated every cultural norm they held dear. As the formal dinner concluded, the galaxy-wide broadcast captured what would become an iconic moment in interspecies relations. Security Chief Dorn, reluctantly but unmistakably, asking for a second helping.